Good day, this is Professor Will, CBMD, PhD. Today is Wednesday, March 20th, 2019. It is 10:00:49 seconds Eastern Standard Time. This is a continuation of my reading on optics and physics. So let's get started here. Radiance, radiant intensity per unit projected area of an extended source. Radiant, spectral radiance per unit wavelength interval. Radiation, or light, monochromatic. Flux at one wavelength or frequency. Ratio aperture. In general, twice the value P sub m in the equation P sub m equals n sin A sub m, where n is the index of refraction of the image space and A is the maximum angular opening of axial bundle of refracted rays. Ratio telephoto, ratio of the equivalent focal length to the front vertex focal distance. Ray, contraction of the term light ray. Ray, chief, central ray of a bundle of rays. Ray emergent, ray of light emerging from a medium as contrasted to the entering or incident ray. Ray extraordinary, ray that has non-isotropic velocity in a doubtly refracting crystal. This ray does not necessarily obey Snell's law upon refraction at the crystal surface. Ray paraxial, ray in a bundle of rays that approaches the chief ray of that bundle as its limiting position. More properly, it is a ray in the sense of Gaussian or first-order optics. Ray principal. In the object space, a ray that is directed at the first principal point in the image space. This ray, when projected backward, intersects the axis at the second principal point. Ray, rim, ray of an image-forming bundle that passes through the rim of the entrance pupil or aperture stop. Usually used in connection with meridian rays, an upper rim ray is one that passes through the bottom. Ray skew, ray that does not lie in a plane containing the axis of a system having rotational symmetry. Rays, marginal, rays of light passing through an optical system near the edge of the aperture. Rectilinear, in a straight line when applied to a lens. It indicated that images of straight lines produced by the lens are not distorted. Rectilinear, in a straight line when applied to a lens. It indicated that images of straight lines produced by the lens are not distorted. Reflectance, ratio of reflected flux to incident flux. This term is applied to radiant and to luminous flux, unless qualified reflectance applies to specular regular reflection. Reflectance diffuse, ratio of flux reflected diffusely in all directions to the total flux at incident specular reflection, excluded the reflectance of a sample relative to a perfectly diffusing and perfectly reflecting standard with 45-degree angle of incidence and observation along the perpendicular to the surface. Reflectance spectral, reflectance evaluated as a function of wavelength. It is numerically the same for radiant and luminous flux. Reflection, condition in which light rays striking a smooth polished surface are bent back into the medium from which they come. Specular or regular reflection from a polished surface, such as a mirror, returns a major portion of the light in a definite direction lying in the plane of the incident ray and the normal. After specular reflection, light can be made to form a sharp image of the original source. Diffuse reflection occurs when the surface is rough, and the reflected light is scattered from each point in the surface. These diffuse rays cannot be made to form an image of the original source, but only of the diffusely reflecting surface itself. Reflection, angle between the normal to a reflecting surface and the reflected ray. Reflection Fresnel, reflection of a portion of light resulting when the light strikes the interface of two materials having two different indices of refraction. It depends upon the index difference and the angle of incidence, and is 0 at Brewer's angle for the polarization. A thin, transparent, anti-reflection coating applied to an optical element gives an additional Fresnel reflection that cancels the original one by interference. Reflection, total internal reflection that takes place within a substance because the angle of incidence of light striking the boundary surface is in excess of the critical angle. Reflection, mixed, simultaneous occurrence of specular and diffuse reflection. Reflection selective, see absorption selective. Reflector, annular, ring-shaped reflector or a series of ring-shaped reflectors mounted about a common center. Refraction, rending of oblique incident rays as they pass from a medium of one index of refraction to a medium of different index of refraction. Refraction, angle of, acute angle between a normal to a refracting surface at the point of incidence and the refracted ray. Refraction, gobble, separation of unpolarized light into the two plane polarized components by doubly refracting crystal. Refraction, index of, a number of applied in relation between the angle of incidence and the angle of refraction when light passes from one medium to another. The index between two media is called the index, and the index when the first medium is a vacuum is called the absolute index of the second medium. Relief I, synonym for distance I. Resolution, limiting angle of, angle subtended by 2 points or lines which are just far enough apart to permit them to be distinguished as separate. The ability of an optical device to resolve 2 points or lines is called resolving power, and quantitatively is inversely proportional to the limiting angle of resolution. Resolution photographic, number of line pairs per inch or per millimeter that can be resolved by an optical system. Reticle, an angular and reticule scale indicator or pattern placed in one of the focal planes of an optical instrument to appear to the observer to be superimposed upon the field of view. Reticles in various patterns are used to measure or locate a point in an image. A reticle may consist of fine wires or fibers mounted on a support at the ends, or a line etched on a clear plane parallel plate. An alternate but less common spelling is reticule. Reversibility law of, if the direction of light is reversed, it will travel in the opposite direction over the same path despite the number of times it is refracted or reflected. Reverted, turn the opposite way so that light becomes left, and vice versa. It is the effect produced by a mirror in reflecting an image. Rings, newtons. When two cleaned and polished surfaces are placed in contact with a thin air film between them, reflected beams of light from the two adjacent surfaces interfere to form a series of rings or bands known as Newton's rings or fringes. Rotation optical, angular displacement of the polarization plane of light passing through a medium. The azimuthal displacement of the field of view achieved through the use of a rotating prism. Run out, total image. If a decentered lens is rotated in a chunk whose axis of rotation passes through a geometric center of a rim of the lens, the image of an object will wobble. If the light source is at an infinite distance, the total image displacement is called the total image runout. It is a measure of the decentering. If the light source is at the focal point of the lens, the direction of the emergent parallel bundle changes through an angle that is a measure of decentering in angular terms. Good day, this is Professor Will, CBMD, PhD. Today is March 20th, 2019. I hope you enjoyed my reading on optics and physics. Have a great day.